Princess Kate entered the trustees' chamber expecting a private estate briefing, but what waited for her was not a routine decision. It was a sealed declaration tied to Diana's most private royal title, a title never meant for public ceremony, never worn for spectacle, and never handed over lightly. By the time the final line was read aloud, Kate was silent, William was rigid, and the room understood that history had just chosen a side. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Kate felt the air change before anyone explained why. William stood beside her, still and watchful, while Charles kept his eyes on the leather folder resting before the trustees. No one smiled, no one reached for water. Kensington Palace had hosted countless private meetings, but this one carried a colder weight because it was not about schedule, charity, or ceremony. It was about Diana, and every person in that room knew her name could still shake the monarchy more deeply than any public scandal. The lead trustee opened the declaration and spoke with careful force. A trustee, in this world, was one of the legal guardians appointed to protect private royal assets, memories, and instructions that could not be casually changed by palace preference. He explained that Diana's preserved legacy had included a private royal title known as Guardian of the People's Crown, meaning a symbolic role created to protect her charitable mission, private letters, and selected patronages from being absorbed into ordinary crown control. Then he said the words that froze the chamber. Kate had inherited it. Kate did not move at first. The title sounded beautiful, but the burden beneath it was devastating. Diana had not left behind a decorative honor. She had left behind a mission loved by the public and feared by those who knew how powerful memory could become. William looked at his wife and saw the shock cross her face. The prince felt pride, but it cut through an older pain, because hearing his mother's name handled like a formal estate matter reopened a wound he had spent years learning to hide. Charles understood the danger immediately. The king knew this decision did not simply lift Kate. It quietly placed Camilla outside a circle she could never enter. The trustee confirmed it through a documented account, preserved with Diana's instructions. The title could not be claimed by Camilla, softened by the crown, or folded into normal royal tradition. Diana had protected it from exactly that. Then another envelope appeared. Kate saw her name written beside Diana's sealed note, and William leaned closer, as if the table itself had become dangerous. The trustee said only the chosen woman could open it. Charles lowered his gaze, and the silence became unbearable. But before Kate could understand what Diana had truly left behind, the room had to face the people who would be wounded by its return. The title did not land on Kate alone. It struck every person in the chamber differently, like a bell ringing through old wounds. William saw his mother's memory rising again. Charles saw a past he had never fully escaped, and Camilla saw a door closing in a corridor she believed she had finally crossed. In that room, no crown, marriage, or palace title could hide what everyone felt. William carried the first shock in silence, but silence did not mean calm. The prince had spent years learning how to speak about Diana without letting grief take control of him, yet this moment made that impossible. Kate stood beside him, as the chosen heir to Diana's most guarded title, and William understood the cruelty of the gift. It honored his wife, yes, but it also placed her inside the storm that had followed his mother, even after death. Kate was no longer simply the future queen. She had become the living bridge between the woman Britain mourned and the monarchy still trying to survive her shadow. Charles knew the danger before anyone else named it. The king understood that Diana's private title gave her legacy a voice inside the royal family without needing permission from the crown. That mattered, because the crown's chain of approval was the normal order of palace control, the system that allowed titles, statements, ceremonies, and decisions to pass through official hands before reaching the public. But this title stood outside that chain. It did not ask the monarch for breath. It did not depend on the palace to exist. It had been protected, preserved, and now delivered straight into Kate's hands. Kate felt the comparison pressing against her from every direction. People had compared her to Diana before, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with cruelty, but this was different. This was not about clothes, kindness, popularity, or public warmth. This was a moral inheritance. It demanded courage, when silence would be safer. It demanded restraint, when others might expect revenge. Kate understood that the title would invite love from some and resentment from others, and that made the honor feel almost painful. Camilla did not move. The queen consort kept her face composed, but her stillness said more than anger could have. When the trustee explained that the title could never pass to her, something invisible shifted. Camilla had gained a crown beside Charles, but Diana's private legacy remained sealed against her. The chamber felt the meaning of that sentence settle heavily. Marriage had not erased memory, and rank had not rewritten trust. The trustee then clarified why the title had been hidden for so long. The crown's ceremonial register, which was the official record used to list formal royal honors, roles, and symbolic duties, had never contained Diana's private title. It had been kept outside that book, so no future courtier could soften it, rename it, bury it, or reshape it into something harmless. Then came the deeper blow. Kate would hold influence over selected charitable archives, memorial decisions, and protected patronage records tied to Diana's final wishes. Camilla finally asked who had authorized the announcement, and her voice cut through the room with quiet force. The trustee did not answer quickly. Charles looked away. William's expression hardened. Kate sensed at once that the reply belonged to a past no one wanted exposed, and that answer dragged everyone back to the single moment that had quietly set this inheritance in motion. Every royal rupture begins long before the public sees it. This one began at a private memorial ceremony that was never meant to become history. No cameras captured the exchange. No official record described the tension. But those who stood close enough remembered the moment perfectly. One request, one refusal, one look across a chapel aisle, and Diana's hidden title began moving toward Kate. Camilla had made the request softly, almost carefully, during the Kensington Garden memorial service 2 years earlier. The ceremony had been private, built around Diana's memory and the charitable work she left behind. But the meaning of that day reached far beyond flowers and prayers. The Kensington Garden memorial service, in this story, was a closed royal gathering, held to honor Diana's private circle of compassion, the causes and people she protected away from palace performance. Charles believed the moment could help heal old divisions. William did not. Camilla asked to place her signature on Diana's private memorial patronage ledger. The ledger was a protected record of Diana's chosen causes, a kind of emotional register, linking her name to charities, letters, and promises she had kept close. To an outsider, one signature might have seemed harmless. To William, it felt like a line being crossed. The prince understood that signing it would symbolically place Camilla inside a legacy Diana had kept separate from the crown, separate from court politics, and separate from the woman who had become Charles's wife. William saw the request as a violation, but he did not explode. He stood still, gripping the chapel program until the paper creased beneath his fingers. That small movement said what he would not say aloud. Kate noticed immediately. She saw the old pain rise in him, the pain of a son forced to watch his mother's memory become a matter of permission, signatures, and palace comfort. Kate stepped closer without speaking, and William felt it. In that quiet second, she became the only person near him who understood that this was not about protocol, it was about protection. The refusal came through an elderly trustee after the ceremony ended. He did not accuse Camilla. He did not embarrass Charles. He simply removed the ledger from the room and later opened Diana's sealed instruction file, a private collection of written directions meant to guide how her memorial legacy would be protected. Inside that file, he found the clause that changed everything. Diana's private title would pass to the future Princess of Wales when the trustees believed she had earned the public's trust through service, restraint, and compassion. Kate did not know that her name had begun moving through those sealed pages. William did not know the trustees had started watching her more closely. Charles did not know the request had triggered a review that would one day shake his family. But the trustees delayed the reveal, waiting until Kate had fully stepped into the role Diana once held in the nation's heart. When Camilla later discovered the memorial ledger had been locked away, her private resentment hardened into something colder. And once that buried chapel moment was spoken aloud, The confrontation no one wanted became impossible to avoid. The confrontation did not begin with shouting. It began with a door closing, a chair scraping softly against polished wood, and Camilla standing across from Kate, with a composure that looked almost too perfect. William remained near the window, Charles near the fireplace, and for a few unbearable seconds, the only sound was the folded document in Kate's hand, trembling against her wedding ring. Camilla asked for the explanation herself. She did not want trustees speaking around her, and she did not want officials turning pain into polished phrases. Kate could have left the room. She could have allowed the estate officers to defend the decision while she stood safely outside the storm. But Kate stayed, because Diana's title had been placed in her hands, and the first test of that inheritance was already waiting in front of her. The title mattered because it did not only honor the past, it gave Diana's memory a living voice, and that voice now belonged to Kate. Charles remained because absence would have looked like surrender. The king understood that this moment touched everything he had spent decades trying to balance: his love for Camilla, his history with Diana, his duty to William, and the stability of the crown. The crown, in plain terms, meant the monarchy's official authority, the system of royal power and public duty that surrounded the sovereign. But this title did not sit neatly inside that system. It carried emotion that no palace office could control, and Charles knew that made it dangerous. Camilla spoke first, and her calmness had sharp edges. She told Kate that Diana's legacy had shaped enough of palace life already, that every corridor, every ceremony, every public comparison seemed to bring the past back into the room. The queen consort did not raise her voice, but her hurt was clear. She had become queen beside Charles, yet Diana's shadow still stood between her and complete acceptance. In that moment, Camilla was not only defending status, she was defending years of survival under a judgment that never truly ended. Kate answered without cruelty. She said she had not asked for Diana's private title, and she had not sought a place in anyone's wound, but she would not reject something Diana had protected for the people who loved her. Kate understood that refusing it might look humble, but it would also hand Diana's most private mission back to the very system designed to soften it. Her voice stayed quiet, yet the meaning struck hard. Some inheritances are too sacred to abandon. William finally stepped forward. The prince had listened long enough. He told Camilla the title had never been about rank, jewelry, precedence, or public triumph. It was about trust. Diana's trustees had decided where that trust belonged, and they had chosen Kate because she carried compassion without demanding ownership of grief. Charles then set his pen down. The small sound changed the room. The king admitted he had known Diana created protections around certain memorial decisions, but he had not known Kate's name had become the final destination. Camilla absorbed the admission like a private defeat. She looked from Charles to William, then to Kate, and something in her expression closed. No apology could undo the decision. No royal title could open what Diana had sealed. Camilla left the room without looking back, and almost instantly the palace machinery began to move. Because emotion had revealed the title, but control would decide what came next. But the title's emotional force was only half the story, because behind it stood a power structure even the crown could not easily bend. A royal title can be decorative, but Diana's private title was different. It carried keys, access, approval, and memory. When the trustees opened the second file, the room changed again. Kate was no longer only receiving an honor, she was being handed quiet authority over pieces of Diana's legacy that had survived years of palace pressure, family discomfort, and careful attempts to place the past under glass. Kate understood the meaning before the trustee finished speaking. This was not a public peerage, not the kind of formal rank that placed someone higher in royal order or closer to ceremonial power. A peerage, in simple terms, was an official title like duke, duchess, earl, or countess, often tied to status and tradition. But guardian of the people's crown was something more dangerous, because it did not shine from a balcony or depend on public display. It guarded Diana's private mission, the letters she protected, the charities she trusted, and the memorial choices that kept her compassion from being turned into decoration. William noticed the strain on Kate's face and moved his hand toward the edge of the file. The gesture was small, but it carried everything he could not say. The prince knew that once this authority became known, Kate would not only be praised, she would be judged, compared, questioned, and blamed by anyone who believed Diana's memory should remain controlled by safer hands. William had already lost his mother to forces that turned pain into pressure. Now he feared his wife was being pulled into the same old battle, only dressed in softer language. The senior trustee continued with a voice that left no room for escape. The title had been designed to sit beside the monarchy, not beneath it. That mattered because moral authority could wound more deeply than constitutional authority. Constitutional power meant the formal legal role of the crown in the state. But this title did not command government, law, or succession. It commanded memory. It gave the chosen holder the right to protect meaning, tone, and access around Diana's most personal legacy. And in a monarchy built on symbols, meaning could be more powerful than command. Kate listened as the second file revealed the true reach of what she had inherited. She alone could approve the future use of Diana's private title. She alone would review selected memorial wording before it entered official palace language. She alone could decide who gained access to certain personal patronage letters connected to Diana's protected charitable circle. Those patronage letters were not ordinary correspondence. They were written links between Diana and the causes she believed reflected the heart of her royal work. Kate felt the honor turn heavy in her hands. Charles sat still, but the king's silence no longer looked neutral. He was hearing boundaries he could not cross. The trustees stated that the crown could not transfer the title to Camilla, dissolve it, or rename it without violating Diana's original protected instructions. That sentence struck the room like a verdict. Camilla had not merely been overlooked, she had been legally and emotionally excluded by design. Then a note reached Charles. The king read it once, and his face tightened. Camilla had already left for Clarence House in tears. William looked at Kate, and Kate looked down at Diana's file, knowing the title had become irreversible. And by the time the palace understood the title could not be undone, the first consequences had already begun. The fallout did not arrive as a public announcement. It arrived as silence. At Clarence House, a staff member paused outside Camilla's sitting room, hearing no voices, no movement, no instruction. Inside, the queen consort sat with her gloves still on, staring at a blank writing card. The title had not stripped her of rank, but it had exposed something more painful. Diana's most guarded legacy had passed around her forever. Camilla did not rage, and that made the moment worse. Anger would have given the room shape. Fury would have given her something to hold. Instead, she sat alone with the formal notice still unopened, knowing what it contained before reading a single line. Clarence House had received confirmation that she held no authority over Diana's private title, no authority over the memorial ledger, and no authority over the patronage archive connected to it. The memorial ledger, in plain terms, was the protected record of Diana's private charitable promises, the names, causes, and commitments that carried her personal mark beyond ordinary royal work. Palace aides moved quickly but quietly. They updated internal legacy files, placed Kate's name beside Guardian of the People's Crown, and removed old placeholder language that had kept the role undefined for years. Those legacy files mattered because they shaped how future royal statements, ceremonies, archive requests, and charitable references would be handled behind the scenes. A single name change inside them could decide who was consulted, who was excluded, and who carried the final moral weight. Kate had not asked for that power, but the palace had already begun treating her as the person Diana's instructions had chosen. Charles arrived later, and found the notice still lying on the table. The king understood at once that Camilla had not opened it because she did not need the words to feel the verdict. He had spent years trying to build peace between past and present, but this decision proved that some wounds had never truly joined. Camilla looked at him, and he saw humiliation rather than anger. That hurt him more. The woman beside him had gained the crown, yet Diana's most private circle had remained beyond her reach, untouched by marriage, time, or royal acceptance. Then the consequences widened. A palace aide discovered that the trustees' announcement had triggered a review of several Diana-linked ceremonial references planned for future royal events. Ceremonial references meant carefully chosen words, symbols, or mentions used during official royal occasions to honor someone's memory. Now each reference connected to Diana had to be examined through Kate's new authority. The title was no longer hidden in a file. It had entered the working machinery of the monarchy, and every adjustment carried emotional risk. Kate received the most delicate warning of all. Her first act as title holder might involve approving or rejecting a memorial statement prepared under Camilla's influence. The choice was brutal. Approval could look like surrender. Rejection could look like revenge. William understood the trap before Kate spoke, and he asked her to meet him privately before she answered. The prince knew this decision would define the title more than any trustee ever could. So before the palace could speak in her name, Kate chose to hear William's truth, without witnesses, titles, or protection. That evening, away from aides and polished statements, William and Kate sat alone, with Diana's sealed note between them. No institution stood in the room. No trustee explained the rules. No courtier softened the meaning. William did not speak like a prince. He spoke like a son, still carrying a mother's absence. And Kate listened as the title became something far deeper than honor. William had asked for this meeting because he knew the palace would soon turn emotion into language. Statements would be drafted. Phrases would be approved. Every word would be weighed for safety. But Diana's note could not be treated like another palace paper. Kate understood that the moment she opened it, the inheritance would stop being procedural and become personal. Procedural meant handled through official steps, signatures, and approvals. But this was different. This was a son asking his wife to understand the wound beneath the crown before the monarchy shaped it into something neat. William looked at the envelope and admitted the fear he had carried for years. He had worried that Diana's memory would either be used as a weapon or slowly pushed aside until only safe fragments remained. The prince knew both dangers too well. Public love could become pressure. Palace caution could become erasure. And now Kate had been placed between both. He told her he had never expected Diana's most guarded title to land in her hands so directly, and the pain in his voice made the room feel smaller. Kate reached for the sealed note with trembling hands. She had faced crowds, illness, judgment, comparison, and silence, but this felt different. This was not a speech written for her. This was Diana speaking across time, through a private message preserved by those who had sworn to protect it. The note explained that compassion must never become performance. It warned that public love can be powerful, but also dangerous when someone begins to use it as proof of victory. Kate read slowly, and with every line, the title became heavier. William watched her absorb the words, and he saw the change happen quietly. Kate realized Diana had not left her a crown-shaped prize. She had left her a burden, restraint, mercy, emotional courage. The title belonged to the woman who could carry public affection without turning it against anyone else. That sentence struck Kate hardest because it answered the trap waiting outside the room. She did not need to humiliate Camilla to honor Diana. She did not need to reject the memorial statement to prove strength. She needed to protect the meaning without feeding the wound. Kate folded the note carefully and looked at William with quiet resolve. Her first act would not be revenge, refusal, or spectacle. It would be a public statement that made the title clear before anyone else could twist it. She would tell the country that Diana's legacy was not a weapon, not a rivalry, and not a prize taken from one woman to crown another. It was a promise of service. And when that statement reached the public, the private inheritance became a national moment. By morning, the story had escaped palace walls. Britain did not wake to an ordinary royal update. It woke to Diana's name printed beside Kate's, in a way no one had seen before. The monarchy's most emotional memory had become present tense. Outside Kensington Palace, people gathered in silence, some holding flowers, others holding phones, all staring at the same gates where grief once became history. Kate watched the coverage without speaking at first. The palace had released its carefully worded statement just after dawn, confirming that she had inherited Diana's private title and describing it as a protected legacy role tied to service and remembrance. A protected legacy role, in simple terms, meant a special responsibility created to guard someone's memory, work, and private wishes from being changed for convenience. But once Diana's name reached the public, the words stopped belonging only to lawyers, trustees, and palace aides. They belonged to the country. William stood behind Kate, quiet and emotional, as the first reports spread across every broadcast. The prince had known Diana's memory still mattered, but this response proved something deeper. It showed that his mother had never been only a royal figure trapped in the past. She remained a living wound, a shared tenderness, and a standard the monarchy could never fully control. Kate saw ordinary people leaving white roses near Kensington Palace, and the sight moved her because those flowers were not for power. They were for love. The newspapers gave the moment its sharpest force. One front page showed Kate in white beside a faded image of Diana, with the headline, "The title she saved for Kate." That single image captured everything the palace had tried to handle carefully, and everything the public felt instantly. It framed the inheritance as a passing of trust from one beloved woman to another, not through blood, not through command, but through compassion. Charles saw the headline too, and the king understood how quickly private decisions could become national judgment. Camilla saw it differently. The queen consort knew the headline did not accuse her directly, yet its silence wounded her more than open attack. Diana's image beside Kate's created a story with no place for Camilla except outside the frame. That was the cruelty of public emotion. It could crown one woman with sympathy while leaving another to feel erased. And still, Kate refused to treat the moment as triumph. She understood that if she allowed the title to become a weapon, she would betray the very note Diana had left behind. A morning broadcaster gave the story a phrase that spread fast. "This is not just inheritance. This is emotional succession." Emotional succession meant something more fragile than royal succession. It meant the passing of feeling, trust, and public devotion from one figure to another. William heard the phrase and felt its danger. Kate heard it and felt its burden. The crowd outside Kensington grew larger, and the palace waited for her first personal words as guardian of the people's crown. But the final meaning of the title would not be decided by headlines, it would be decided by what Kate chose to do with it. When Kate finally spoke, she did not claim victory. She did not mention rivalry, pain, or palace division. She stood before the title with humility, as if understanding that Diana's legacy could not be owned by anyone who needed to win. In that moment, the shock faded, the conflict settled, and the monarchy saw what the trustees had truly recognized. Kate had inherited not power, but purpose. Kate chose her words with care, because she knew the country was listening for more than a statement. She defined Diana's private title as a promise to protect compassion, dignity, and service inside the royal family, not as a weapon against anyone left outside it. The guardian of the people's crown, in simple terms, was a protected legacy role created to guard Diana's private mission, her charitable memory, and the human meaning behind her public work. Kate made that meaning clear. She would not use Diana's name to reopen old wounds. She would use it to protect the values Diana had carried when the palace felt coldest. William listened with quiet pride, and the prince knew Kate had done something almost impossible. She had honored his mother without turning grief into revenge. She had accepted public affection without using it to crush Camilla. For William, that mattered because Diana's memory had been pulled between love and pain for years, and he had feared this title would become another battlefield. Instead, Kate gave it peace. The future king saw his wife carry the burden with restraint, and that restraint became its own kind of strength. Charles felt the sting of history, but the king also felt relief. He understood that the trustees' decision had closed one door, yet Kate had refused to slam it in anyone's face. The palace accepted the ruling as final, and formally recorded her as the holder of guardian of the people's crown. That formal record mattered because it made the inheritance permanent inside the palace system. It meant no courtier could quietly erase the title, no official could rename it into something safer, and no future argument could move it away from Kate. Camilla received the final statement alone. The queen consort read every line and understood the painful truth. Kate had not humiliated her, but Diana's most private legacy had still passed beyond her reach forever. That mercy made the verdict harder, not softer. It showed Camilla that Kate had won nothing by force and taken nothing through cruelty. The title had simply recognized what the trustees believed Diana had protected all along. Kate's first act sealed the meaning of the entire story. She preserved Diana's memorial patronage archive under public service protections, ensuring it could never be used for palace rivalry, private score settling, or emotional control. The title changed Kate because it forced her to carry Diana's memory with grace. It changed the monarchy because it proved emotional truth can outlast rank, resentment, and control. In the end, Diana's most private royal title did not divide the monarchy forever. It revealed who could carry love without turning it into power. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.